Good evening and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right-of-centre viewpoint. And we've got only three of us today because, very sadly, Susan's feeling a bit under the weather and is not with us tonight. So we do still have Sam.
Hey.
And Jonathan.
Hello.
Really loud Jonathan, as we're calling him tonight, because his microphone, we can't turn it down. We've tried. It's just booming out, so that's the way it goes. Okay, so we've got a few things to talk about tonight, as usual. And the first one. BBC Breakfast viewers were left stunned after Sadiq Khan unleashed a scathing attack on Boris Johnson for the Prime Minister's defence of the Winston Churchill statue. Sadiq Khan has drawn a furious backlash for his decision to board up the statue of Sir Winston Churchill in Parliament Square this weekend. Mr Khan insisted it was a necessary move to make amid fears the Churchill statue will become a flashpoint for violence. However, Boris Johnson labelled the decision absurd and shameful, while Home Secretary Priti Patel said Winston Churchill should be liberated. So, what do you think? Who's in the right here? Sadiq Khan correct to board it up? Boris Johnson thinking he's crazy? What do you think, Jonathan?
I think it's a pretty daft idea, boarding it up. It's a pretty robust thing, and if it did get smashed up, you could kind of just replace it with another one, so it's not really a problem.
I think it does cost a few bucks, actually, Jonathan. I think it's not quite as simple as just replacing it with another one.
True, but it's it's in front of Parliament, and I'm sure the good ratepayers of London will stump up.
What do you think, Sam?
I think it's a bit of a shame, really, but I'm not surprised that Sadiq Khan's taking the side of the lefties. Not surprising me at all. But what I do think sad is, and also unsurprising, is the BBC News. I don't know if you saw that, but they were called it the controversial statue. So they've set that narrative now to be the controversial statue.
Hasn't he been time and again voted the most popular Prime Minister of all time?
Yeah, and the irony of him, him being and then being attacked by loads of other people, it's just nonsense.
So I just... Sorry, go ahead, John.
The thing was, it was controversial, because when it first came out, everybody said, well, he doesn't have a hunchback, and it's sort of, it's not very flattering.
Yeah, but I don't think that's quite what they mean, to be honest.
I'm sure it is.
The trouble is, this is all over the world now, isn't it? They're going back and looking at everybody's past, and if there's anything that they did in the past or said in the past that doesn't fit with today's morality, never mind that things have changed, it's time to cancel them and tear down their statues and take down anything about them and not talk about them. And a lot of people, interestingly, they have not seemed to target some of the lefties. So the Marx Memorial is still safe and sound. Nobody's graffitied that. What do you make of that, Jonathan?
Well, they have graffitied in the past. In fact, I think they've had a couple of bomb explosions there. So, these things happen.
What about that dog statue, Jonathan?
What about... that which led to the dog riots.
Yeah,
there was a statue that was sort of put up in around about 1905 called the Brown Dog statue. And there were Brown Dog riots because one group of people didn't like it, mainly medical students. And...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've muted you.
Steve is so angry.
Go on, carry on. I've unmuted you. Nobody wants to hear about the dog riots.
It's actually interesting because it's similar to what's happening today. So it's about a doctor that did a vivisection on a brown dog, didn't he? And then I think he said he didn't do it or something. I don't remember the whole ins and outs of it. But then they all had a protest carrying dog effigies, and then some Swedish feminists got involved. It was all very complex, really. And now there's a statue of this.
Are they going to tear it down?
It's got... the thing is, it got most of the ridiculous ingredients of the sort of things going on now. This went on from about 1903 right through to 1910. And amongst other things, according to Wikipedia, it involved the infiltration by Swedish feminists of the university medical lectures and pitched battles between medical students and the police, police protection for the statue of the dog, and a libel trial at the Law Courts of Justice, and the establishment of a Royal Commission to investigate the use of animals in experiments.
I blame you for this, Sam.
So the brown dog affair is quite a big thing, really, in a load of different ways.
Protection. So the police protected a statue of a brown dog, but they won't protect Winston Churchill.
Well,
different policemen.
So arguably, Sadiq Khan did protect him by boarding him up. I mean, I guess it's hard to say that at least he tried to protect it. I suppose that's something in his favour. But it would be nice if the forces of law and order stopped people breaking the law. I mean, we're hearing all over the place now. The police are told, step aside, let it continue, take a soft touch. When people are, what does that say to people? If they see people coming into their city or the nearby city and just smashing stuff up and breaking it and nobody stops them, what does that say about the rule of law?
Well, what does it say about the rule of to perform an illegal vivisection? That's what I want to know.
Well, it's not so much that, it's sort of criminal damage to this statue of a dog. It was sort of attacked by medical students, and apparently it led to frequent vandalism of the memorial and needed a 24-hour police guard against the so-called anti-doggers.
Yeah, I did read that. It made me laugh. And didn't they invade the jet meetings and things as well? It wasn't quite big.
Oh yeah, the trade unions got involved as well, and so did the sort of Votes for Women people as well, because the medical students were a bit fed up with them as well, because they were mainly vivisectionists, anti-vivisectionists. So yeah, it kind of had all the mix of all the sort of, the type of loonies we've got today.
So it's nice to be topical. No one can say we can't have our finger on the pulse here at Unapologetic, can they?
Yeah, but no, we do, because it was a metaphor, wasn't it? The dog and the vivisection on the dog was a metaphor for what was happening to women across the world, and they were fighting for their rights to vote, and suffragettes were being force-fed in Brixton Prison, and it was just a metaphor, wasn't it?
Are you all just reading straight? Is this just a Wikipedia show now?
Yeah, basically.
Because anyone can read out passages from Wikipedia, I'm looking for actual personal comment here.
Well, actually, having seen a picture of the brown dog statue, it's long gone now, but it'd be a good idea to put it back if they're going to put memorials back. They did put a replacement for it, but it's not quite the same character of dog. The modern one, it's a very nice statue, but the dog looks a bit more like a pig. But whereas the other dog was sort of kind of a bit more grand. Really.
I miss Susan so much right now. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2. Bit of good news for you. A vaccine update has prompted excitement after the leader of the Oxford University coronavirus trials confirmed that the entire British population could be vaccinated by the end of this year. A coronavirus vaccine could possibly be available by autumn, according to Oxford University trial leader Sir John Bell. When asked what time he thought the entire British population would be vaccinated, Sir John said Christmas. So LBC host Matt Fry was stunned and reminded the professor that many experts originally predicted the process of starting vaccinations wouldn't begin until at least 2021. So what do you make of it? Is he exaggerating? Has he come up with a miracle? Is this what happens when you introduce competition to the marketplace? What do you think, Sam?
I'm still not finished talking about the dog. No, we're done with that subject.
We'll come back to it later.
Okay, so we're talking about what we think about coronavirus tests. I don't know. How do we know when there'll be a vaccine? It's a bit of an open-ended question, isn't it, really?
Well, how we know is that Sir John Bell, the leader of the university trials, said Christmas.
Oh, well, if he's leading the trials, then yeah, it probably will be.
I kind of feel you aren't actually paying attention to these stories, are you? Jonathan, what do you make of it?
Well, it's interesting. Well, going off on a slight tangent,
I really want it to be
one of the groups that have been quite seriously affected by this, the merchant seamen, who are sort of stuck in
this is coming, Jonathan. It's coming. You put this on the agenda. It's coming.
Oh right, okay.
Talk about seamen for hours, Jonathan.
Say again.
You can talk about seamen for hours. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. And anti-dogging, for that matter.
Steve hates us so much tonight.
I feel Sadiq Khan has lost control of London, and I've lost control of this podcast. That's how I feel.
What is that strange whinging voice? Where's it coming from?
It's coming from you.
I thought it was just Sam and me here.
Look. Has anybody got anything to say about this coronavirus vaccine, or do we just not? Does just nobody care about coronavirus now?
No, nobody cares. It's just, what is there to say? You've just said that the guy who's leading the trial said it's going to be ready. So why would we disbelieve that?
Well, I don't know. I thought you might have some comment. I mean, what we do on Unapologetic usually is we introduce topical news subjects and then we discuss them. We don't just say, well, that's a good story, but let's move on. Because if we did, the whole podcast would be over so quick.
Yeah, but maybe you should pick better topics rather than like it's almost like saying here's a guy from like, I don't know, I can't even think of a good example, but here is the man that is leading a cure on the common cold, and he says the cure on the common cold will be ready on the 5th of September, 2022. Do you agree? How could we possibly not agree if the only information we've got is what this expert guy has said?
Well, it's topical. I mean, I would say, for instance, that with all the Americans trying to be the first people to solve the vaccine and to get it out there, and with a massive competition, what's happened is that initially it was bureaucrats in charge, doing what they always do and saying, oh, it's going to take forever. And then we introduced some market competition, and suddenly everything's sped up. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans don't now say November or something. So my point, I guess, from a right of centre viewpoint, is that market competition changed to what the experts were saying. Anyway, I know that's probably far too much for today, so I'm gonna leave that one and just remind you that if I'd gone with the clever topics that were originally suggested, we'd be talking about how hard it is for you to get your hair dyed.
It's hard.
Agenda item 3. For nearly 4 months, Captain Andrei Kodrenkov or something and his oil tanker crew haven't set foot on dry land. With global travel at a virtual standstill due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Russian captain was forced to extend his normal contract. He still doesn't know when he'll be able to go home. Countries across the world have imposed lockdowns, shut borders and suspended international flights to curb the spread of the new virus. The move was deemed essential to prevent rampaging contagion, but merchant ship crews have been unintended collateral damage. About 150,000 seafarers are stranded at sea in need of crew changes, according to the International Chamber of Shipping. Roughly another 150,000 are stuck on shore, waiting to get back for work. So these people have been stuck out at sea for months. And this was your topic, Jonathan. So what do you make of it?
Well, it's a disgrace, really. I mean, what's interesting about this, if you've been stuck on an oil tanker for the last 2 months, the one thing you know with absolute certainty is you haven't got coronavirus. So they could have easily let them off. And they could have easily, for the amount of risk involved and the small numbers of people involved relatively, they could have allowed people back onto the ships. Because even if they had coronavirus, within a fortnight, they wouldn't have.
They must have been supplying them, mustn't they, with like food and drink, otherwise they would have run out. So some of them probably had a few beers. And what do you do with a drunken sailor, Sam?
I don't know. I think I should be clever and know the next line, but I don't.
Okay. So commenting on the whole situation of one of these topics that you were keen to have on the podcast?
Well, yeah, it's a bit wrong, isn't it? Like, if you've been on the ship for so long, it must be pretty lonely. I wouldn't want to be on a ship for all that time. But, I mean, it must be better than it used to be in the old days. I mean, they don't, like, pickle you in a barrel of rum when you die and stuff now. It seems a bit more civilised. They probably have the internet and everything, so...
That must have made for some unusual flavoured rum.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have. And it's not like, I suppose you can still see your families by video link and stuff. It must be a bit less than loaded.
But the other thing is some of these guys' contracts have actually run out. So they're actually stuck on a ship and not being paid.
Oh, that's rotten. They can't do that, surely. That's not even legal.
Well, it is how it is. And the thing is, this is, they're merchant seamen. They're outside of, the law in many respects. Particularly if they're not on a British ship.
I heard apparently, I don't know how true this is, but apparently the Navy don't have a very good view of merchant seamen. But is that true? I don't know.
Oh, I've no idea really. I mean, merchant seamen must vary enormously from everything from running a fishing smack through to a mega oil tanker, which is bigger than an aircraft carrier. So I mean, what's a merchant seaman?
Anyway, so you were right about sticking to those original topics that were suggested. They're certainly riveting. So moving on to agenda item 4. You may
actually, I'll mention something else about merchant seaman, which a lot of people don't realise, is that if you are a merchant seaman, you have a merchant seaman's ticket. You don't actually need a passport. And the other thing with that is that you can have a merchant seaman's ticket without actually being a sailor, for want of a better word. If you, for instance, are an entertainer on a cruise liner, you can have a merchant seaman's ticket. And cross-channel ferry people can have a merchant seaman's ticket if they work in the canteen. So it's it's an interesting sort of area of the law and what their rights are and so on.
Definitely does sound absolutely thrilling.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I can feel us shedding viewers by the second. I don't know how many people are unsubscribed, but it's going to be a few. Anyway, agenda item 4. CHAZ has been popping up in the news recently, and there remains confusion as to what and where it is. It is the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, and it comprises of about 6 blocks in Seattle. The area has been ceded to protesters after a night of unrest in the city. After the death of George Floyd, protests broke out across America, with some cities suffering worse protests than others. Seattle has experienced intense standoffs between the protesters and the police, and Donald Trump has blamed the radical left for the protest and the taking over of the area. So where we are at the moment is that a number of blocks around the old police station in that area of Seattle are a separate state outside of America, they claim. And interestingly, you guys will like this, the first thing that these hard left protesters did is set up a barrier, a wall, a border, and then put armed police on it to control who comes in and out. So what do you think of this, Sam?
Oh, it's hypocrisy in a massive way, isn't it? But it's crazy. I've completely lost all law and order and everything. It's been taken over. But if I was Trump, I'd be saying, all the benefits, healthcare, everything, stop for you people. If you want, like, people in that commune, if you want to go it alone, like, off you go. And maybe people will see that kind of being on their own commune isn't such fun when, they've got shot and there's no hospital to fix them and stuff. Because, it's all well and good having these ideas, but the reality isn't as fun, is it?
Well, I mean, interestingly, the American media, which are desperate to downplay everything that's going on, initially when they were saying that the protests were peaceful and you could see fires in the background and rocks going over their head, and now they're saying that it's like a block party. That's all it is. It's just a few people. And then you see these videos of guys with guns on the checkpoint and threatening other guys, threatening to shoot them because they're doing graffiti. And although actually that's still more law and order than the police seem to be doing there at the moment. But it's just a very interesting experiment, I think, because how can people?
It's not that new. We allowed the same thing in the 1970s when there were no go areas in Northern Ireland, which the police and the army could not enter.
Yeah, but a no-go area, Jonathan, is not quite the same. They ran an
operation called Operation Motorman, and they steamed in there with sort of armoured cars and so on, and took them out, and re-established the British flag. And that's what the Americans need to do.
Well, I think you're right.
It's a war. It is technically a war happening now, and people have declared a separate state within the country, and if you were living in another country, people would treat that as a serious declaration of war and go in and have some serious consequences. But I think that, I don't know, it's just difficult. I think what I find most frustrating about this, although people are waking up a bit now, is that everyone's saying, it's Black Lives Matter is just about everyone supporting each other and etc. etc. It's not. They're very clear on their website that their whole motivation and aim is to bring down capitalism. Yeah. That's what it's about. It's just a massive left-wing organisation, and people shouldn't pretend otherwise.
No, they've hijacked the tragic death of Mr. Floyd, and they're using it to push hard left policies like defunding the police, closing the police down, bringing down capitalism, a whole host of other kind of hard left agenda items, and you can see it. They're not even shy about saying it. But some people still foolishly believe that it's just about trying to fight racism, which I think everybody pretty much agrees on. So it's a difficult situation. I've just got a little bit more I'm going to read to you. So the Seattle Police Officers Guild President Mike Solon warned about the need for strong political leaders, as the no police zone in his city could be replicated in others. He said, "This is very concerning, and I think it should have everybody across the country deeply worried, because this could metastasize across the country. It's quite clear that the City of Seattle elected officials are lacking the political will to enforce the rule of law. And this is the closest I've seen since a 20-year profession in public safety of our country becoming a lawless state." Now that's strong words from a public official. And I feel a bit sorry for Trump, because of course the states control themselves and what Trump can do is a little limited. And even if he were to kind of go in like a strong man and retake it, that's what the protesters want. They want to take pictures of him sending in the military or armed police, and everybody, and these guys will all act like martyrs. It's what they want. They will then say, like they always say, what a racist he is and how he's the one who provoked it.
To do any of this, all he needs to do is go and put American soldiers on the border of CHAZ, and he says, okay, that's fine. You want to be an independent state, off you go. But if you can't come into American soil, off you go. You're independent now. You don't have an American passport anymore. You're a citizen of CHAZ, and leave them to it. If they want to share their free vegan pizza all day, that's great. But I'm telling you, that vegan pizza is going to run out, and they need to do a supply run. They can't, because they can't get back into America. That's what I would do if I was Trump.
I don't know. I think if they did a GoFundMe, they'd get loads of money, because I was looking at the Black Lives Matter GoFundMe in the UK, and it's up to nearly £1 million.
Steve, what use is money? What currency are they using, first of all? Because if they're not American citizens, what is their currency? How can they use the dollar? Second of all, even if Trump's like, that's fine, we'll still let you use the dollar, and they buy stuff, how are they going to get it into the zone? Because, if there's American soldiers there on the border, how are they going to make any trades?
If he builds a big wall around the whole of CHAZ, then it would be like Escape from New York. You'd actually have a movie coming to life. Although probably that movie would probably be banned now.
You think I'm joking? I am actually deadly serious, and I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be like horrible. I just think people do these things because they think it's fun. It's fun to just all sit there together, we'll have a little commune and a little cooperative, and we'll put statues up and sing and share some food. But they still want to then go and access other things in America when they need it. They still want to access benefits and jobs and etc., etc., etc. And you don't get to pick and choose what bits of society you want to follow.
Well, actually, this guy, Mr. Solon, he added a few more words. He said that people that have taken and basically stolen the George Floyd protest message and are now using it to benefit themselves and holding the rest of the reasonable citizens of Seattle hostage. He said it's completely unacceptable. And then noted that other places like Nashville and Portland are also showing some signs that the people there want to do something similar. So it is spreading. He wasn't wrong about that.
Yeah, that's why I think that Trump needs to go on, because I think going in with guns and stuff is not good. People are entitled to set up their own state if they want to set up their own state, but they also then need to have the consequences of that. And the consequences of that is they have to start a state from the ground up and from the beginning. And they can go, if they want to start, putting some soil down and growing cabbages and living on a few carrots and having no internet and stuff, great, happy days. That's up to them. But they can't expect to have all the goodies that comes with American life and consequences.
What do you think, Jonathan? What, you got anything to add to this?
Well,
there's lots. There was talk at one stage of Puerto Rico becoming part of the US. I mean, perhaps they ought to do a one-for-one swap and offer the Puerto Ricans the chance of living there and ship all them out to Puerto Rico.
I don't know about that, but I do think that that Trump is stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because he either takes the strong action that I think most of the people of America on the kind of right of centre would like to see him take, and then be vilified as a demon racist again, or he does nothing or plays it hard, plays it gentle and lets the state control themselves. They're even attacking their own Democrat leaders, not just the Republicans. But then he gets called weak or saying that he's hiding in his bunker or whatever nonsense they come out with each day. So I don't know how he wins. He must be talking to a lot of high-level advisors.
One thing that's obvious, if they're not part of the US, is take them off the electoral register, so they don't get a vote when it comes to the next elections.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, obviously those elections are coming up, and I think what people need to be honest about is that a lot of this is actually about those elections. There's a lot of strategy and political moves taking place here to try and stop Donald Trump winning a second term. And anyone who thinks that none of the left are doing that in America just don't know what they're... And the fact that it's spread here as well, and some of that boils back to Brexit, in my opinion. Some of that boils back to the divisions that formed then, and some of the same people are now using this new situation to further their arguments. Don't you think?
Yeah, but speaking of Puerto Rico, have you ever played that game, Puerto Rico?
That's Puerto Rico, yeah.
I've never played it. It's supposed to be good, isn't it?
No, it's a terrible game. But there are some people who like it.
Alright.
Well, the games are available.
Anyway, we've got to the end of the podcast, thrilling as it has been today, and we get to that point where we ask each of you if you've got anything else you want to talk about, or anything you want to add. So I'm going to go first to you, Sam, Do you have anything additional you want to talk about?
Oh, maybe, because it doesn't feel like we've been talking for very long, to be honest, does it?
Well, sometimes you just said this is boring. I don't want to talk about this. So
I don't think that's exactly true, is it?
so
Why don't we talk about public order and modern policing?
I think we have talked a bit about that. It's too. It sounds like something you'd get at a seminar. It's too broad. But if you want to, go ahead. What do you want to say about it? It
I don't
exists.
know
What?
about it,
Right.
to be honest.
Okay, good subject. Glad I asked. So, go on then.
So I'm just going to say, there's obviously protests today. That's the thing. And then it's difficult, isn't it? Because
Imagine this chap who urinated next to the memorial to the policeman who was murdered.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, so basically, on Twitter, there's the police officer that got killed by the terrorist outside the House of Parliament.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure if we're just talking over each other now, because you and Jonathan have both started different stories.
No, it's the same story.
Okay,
so basically, the police officer that got killed outside the House of Parliament, I think it was last year, by the terrorist. You remember he got stabbed?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically there's a picture on Twitter of one of the protesters today, like urinating on his grave.
Yeah. I mean,
it's pretty, to be honest.
Obviously, it's completely disrespectful, and the guy's probably drunk and an idiot, no doubt about it. But it's also pretty disrespectful to graffiti on war memorials. And I noticed that the media seem to focus on something that they want to talk about and ignore lots of things they don't want to talk about. And it's the double standards that irritate me.
Well, I think they picked on that one because objectively it's just not on. And particularly since the guy was within 100 yards of some public toilets. You don't go weeing in the street, whether it's near a memorial or not.
No, you don't. But I think the point Steve's trying to make is that the hypocrisy of it. But then I suppose the left would say, "Are we being hypocritical by not criticising him?" I don't know. It's difficult. I think the whole
to criticise him. He's obviously a complete idiot.
I think the whole situation at the moment is just. It seems that both sides seems to have absolute morons within their ranks that just completely mess up and ruin their causes. But I do think at the same time today, I'm not surprised that there was such a strength of feeling of people that went out to protest and defend statues because people are angry.
Yeah, it even happened here. So we live, the nearest place to us that had a BLM march, I think, was a town called Kings Lynn. And I know that a bunch of local people went up to Kings Lynn to stand around the statues with the intention of making sure nobody smashed them up. And apparently nothing happened, and it was pretty peaceful, so that's good news, because you wouldn't want anything to kick off. But, I don't support anybody who's rude or swearing or doing Nazi salutes or any of that horrible stuff. All of those people, rotten people, just as bad as everyone else. But people who stand politely around a statue and try and prevent nutters bringing them down, they're heroes to my mind.
The other thing with the Nazi salute is interesting. I mean, if someone is doing a Nazi salute, technically they're not doing a salute because they're not wearing a hat. But setting that aside, if it's a Nazi salute, it's very obviously a Nazi salute. And a lot of what is being cited as being Nazi salute is people holding their phones up to take pictures. Yeah, so, if you look at the Nazi salutes, they're holding a camera.
Yeah, I think these guys that they focused on were doing, or clearly they were trying to be edgelords and doing the Nazi salute to be offensive, like idiots. But you're right, sometimes they catch people who just happen to be pointing at something and they try and make out that it's a Nazi salute, but I'm not sure that was the case this time.
Well, I'm trying to find the whole details of this urination thing as well, because the main place I saw it was Sky News, and I literally don't trust anything Sky News says, ever.
There's something wrong with your audio, Sam. It's like click, 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 clicking when you're talking.
Weird. What about now?
Yeah,
well, I've seen a picture of him sort of having a wee next to this memorial. The thing is about the memorial, though, it's sort of halfway between the size of, say, a war memorial, as a war grave, the stone you would have on that, and a sort of fire hydrant sign. It's quite small, and it's right close to the ground. So, I mean, arguably, it doesn't stand out as a memorial. If they were going to do a memorial to the policeman, they should have done a much better one than they did. Because, the guy could easily have not noticed it.
Yeah, but he still peed in the
But
street.
that's not an excuse. He was weeing on the floor anyway, so he should have been arrested for that. But, so I've no sympathy for him. But on the other hand, I don't think he intentionally was weeing next to the grave of this, or the memorial to this policeman.
Well, at the end of the day, he did that, and a lefty weed on the cenotaph. At the end of the day, there's been some pretty disgusting behaviour on both sides, to be honest. But the whole thing, what I think makes me really sad is that I think actually England is a very tolerant country, and I just don't know. I think everyone's arguing and fighting, and I actually think we actually live in a really, really tolerant place as it is, and I think people need to this is not the way forward. This is going to lead to some sort of civil war, and that's not what we want. This is not the way.
No, that clicking is still going on there on your mic, Sam. What makes me sad is that I heard all over the news today, and even Boris Johnson sadly got in on the pitch, going on and on about the far right people who are stoking up violence. This violence has been being stoked up by the left wing people for days and days and days and days and days. And finally, some right-wing guys come out, and that's all the news talks about. It's all they talk about. You would think, a friend of mine from America said, I think this must be right-wingers doing this. Because they heard this, that's what the news is putting about. It's just lies. These guys are idiots, no doubt about it. I don't think they should be going there trying to start trouble. But how sad is it when the only people who seem to be willing to defend our history and our statues and our monuments are these nutters, these right-wing guys? We should be ashamed that moderate people aren't there defending it. We should be ashamed that these left-wingers think it's an alright thing to do. That's what we should be ashamed about, but all we talk about is these guys.
Yeah, and I think all the politicians have got a lot to answer for, to be honest, because there wasn't any kind of race war in the UK at all. A few left-wingers came and started one, and we just ignored them, and we all kind of, even politicians were saying, to a degree, agreeing with them. Even myself, a few podcasts ago was saying, actually, maybe, we need to think clearly about this, and maybe everyone's in the right. But it wasn't. It was a load of hard left activists came and started this. We all stood by and let it happen for weeks and weeks, and now people have fought back, and now we're saying, this is so awful. Now, don't get me wrong, yes, it is awful for these extreme right people to go and do things like that, but it's hypocrisy to not be treating the Black Lives Matter people the same.
Yeah, there is constant double standards, and right across the media. And the trouble is, I'm absolutely with Maya Tusi when he says defund the BBC. I would shut the BBC down tomorrow if it were within my power to do it, because I just think they're such a corrupt organisation. Not saying there aren't decent people working in there. There are still decent folks working in there, decent journalists, but the organisation itself is now so biased all the time that it's no longer fulfilling its purpose at all. And we are not well served. Our local newspapers, mostly completely corrupt and biased. Our all the media services all over the country, all swinging to the left, all swinging to the kind of left liberal side. And who is speaking for the majority of the country who just elected a Conservative government and voted for Brexit? We seem to be ceding our spokesman to Nigel Farage. I'm not particularly a Nigel Farage fan at all, but people need to speak up. Boris needs to speak up more. He said a few things, and I've applauded him, but they all need to be letting the regular people know out there who are saying, how is this law and order going on, completely lost in so many places? How are these people allowed to act illegally and nobody stops them? Someone needs to say, in government, this got to stop. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think they have got to, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen now, and I don't think Boris can win this, because I think the problem is it's gone too far, and now if he goes in hard, it looks like he's going hard against the people that are trying to stand up to Black Lives Matter. So he can't win in a way, can he? Because, if he goes in now and says, right, this is it, enough's enough, we're going to be doing X, Y, Z, people are going to say, we're only saying that now because the right-wingers came out. So he can't win, really, can he?
He's in the exact same boat as Trump, in a way. They're both in the same boat, in that they're utterly terrified of being called a racist, if you like, even though this has moved way beyond race issues. And they're both absolutely terrified to do what so many people are now crying out to do. They're not pleasing anyone, though. They're not pleasing the side who are fighting and destroying stuff and doing all the protests, and they're not pleasing the side who want it all to stop. Nobody's being pleased by this.
No.
What do you think, Jonathan? You're very quiet.
Yeah, well, I'm still reflecting on the brown dog and sort of how we need to put that statue back. But it seems to, I mean, it was the main article this evening, and we've seemed to have drifted away from it, really.
Yeah.
I thought the statue was back, actually.
Well, yeah, but it's not exactly the same, and it's not in the same place.
Also, another thing which is interesting, which no one's talking about, is the fact that all of these massive global corporations, like your Amazons, are so behind Black Lives Matter and bringing down capitalism, which I find massively ironic, seeing as capitalism's made them all this money. And I just thought, actually, probably because monopolies do well under communism.
But it's easy to explain, because if they if they give lip service to the woke crowd, they won't have people trying to cancel them, shut them down, close them down, protesting against them. It gives them an easier life. They know capitalism isn't going anywhere. These crazy lefties are never going to get rid of capitalism. It's never, ever going to happen, because it runs the world. And it is what's made the world the most prosperous it's ever been in the history of mankind. And they're never bringing it down, whatever they think and however they try and act. So the companies, these big corporations, feel completely comfortable paying lip service to these crazy left-wing causes, knowing that they're protected.
And also, what makes me frustrated about these lefties is, like, they're saying how anti-slavery they are, but they're completely ignoring what happens in North Korea and how the people there are massively oppressed all the time and killed and, have to work all day just to feed their family. And even then, it's not enough rice portions to feed one person, let alone a whole family. But apparently that doesn't exist, all these left-wing places are wonderful. Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, they never seem to kick off about the many black lives that are taken by other black people. But when a white cop does it, the whole world stops. Now, don't get me wrong, that guy should not... That's evil what happened, and that death of Mr. Floyd is tragic. But when you look at the statistics and the actual situation, you've got to say, why are you not focusing on these other sites of death? Why don't you seem to care the rest of the time? And I just think if you care about people, you should care about them all the time, not just when it suits you for your political aims.
Mentioning Venezuela, the sort of item that I came across, and I sort of half looked at, and I'm not entirely sure what the context or anything else was, but it consisted of this cruise liner which was off the coast of Venezuela, which had been sort of sat there because it got either some engine problem or CV or something, I can't remember. And the Venezuelan Navy was then sent out, and given that they're, it's a mad regime, that one, the naval captain then decides to ram this, passenger ship. The only thing is that the passenger ship apparently was an icebreaker of some sort, and the Venezuelan ship was severely damaged and sank, according to this story. I don't know whether either of you guys came across this.
No.
You want to Google it, Sam?
What am I supposed to be? Well, no, I don't know why we were supposed to be.
Venezuelan Navy loses a ship.
Not really that interested, to be honest.
Well, that's a bit harsh.
Very harsh. It's an act of war against, I think it was an American ship as well. So it could have sort of further implications.
Everything that is happening in Venezuela is crazy. I mean, they're living in mud hut and bamboo homes. They've got no power, no sewage, no running water. I mean, it's just awful. Absolutely, it's getting worse and worse and worse by the day. This is what socialism does for you. That you end up having to walk miles to go water from a well, no toilets. It's this is nice.
Eat your pets, eat the zoo animals.
Eat the zoo animals because you're all starving.
But don't forget, you can't blame that on socialism, Sam, because that's not real socialism.
Oh, that's what they always say. But this is what I'm saying. This is why, going back to Trump, this is why he needs to do this with this CHAZ zone, because when those people that are in CHAZ start to get really hungry and the vegan pizza runs out, we'll see how long they be vegans for when they're absolutely starving hungry and they can't get any food in and they've had to start their commune. I'm telling you now, they suddenly won't be vegans anymore.
Initially, one of the state representatives, I forget which level they were at, actually denied it was even happening. They said, "Oh, I've not even heard about this. Perhaps it's not a reputable news source." I mean, everyone was talking about it. I mean, they must be they're in a terrible situation, aren't they? Because they've hung their mast on this giant protest. They're all supporting it. They're all saying this is what we're with, and then all this stuff starts to happen, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't great." And then all these leftists calling for the police to be disbanded. Notice they've started trying to say they're not calling for that, but it's on video. When they kicked out the mayor of, is it the mayor of Minneapolis, got kicked out of the speech, Jacob something, and they were like, "Go Jacob, go," or "Go home Jacob, go home," and kicked him out. And he literally laid before them and begged forgiveness and said he understood his white privilege and he was a rotten man because of the colour of his skin, etc., etc. But all he wouldn't say is that he wanted to completely disband the police, and they turned on him like that.
And they want to disband the police, but then they want to have their own people armed in their little commune. Crazy.
This is where we are. The world has quite literally gone mad. And here we are, Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right-of-centre viewpoint, talking about it all. It's time to say goodnight. Say goodnight, Jonathan.
Good night.
Say goodnight, Sam.
Night.
I'm Steve, and we'll talk to you all soon.